There was new, quite startling evidence at the Grenfell inquiry yesterday by the architects of the Grenfell Tower. We're joined from New Broadcasting House by the BBC's Kate Lamble, and she produces the BBC's Grenfell Tower Inquiry podcast. Kate, what did we learn yesterday?
So essentially, the architect Studio E had lots and lots of experience building things like schools and leisure centres, but the initial team that worked on the Grenfell Tower project had no experience at all in cladding a high-rise residential building. And they were really aware that this lack of experience could be a problem, particularly if the project was put out to tender. So we now know that what they did was they deliberately delayed some of their payments to make sure that their quote would come in under a certain threshold, the threshold at which competition would have to be invited. We also learned that the lead architect on the Grenfell Tower project didn't read building regulations related to fire safety while he was working on the project. He wasn't aware how cladding could meet those specifications. He had never heard of some specifications like limited combustibility, which the materials he was selecting had to adhere to. He hadn't even heard that some high-rise buildings have different building regulations. Essentially, what they were relying on is the fact that they could export some of this detailed design work, as they say, of the cladding to specialist contractors, and that work would be checked by building control, not them. They wouldn't be responsible.
Well, Kate, thank you very much for bringing us up to date. As I say, pretty dramatic evidence given there yesterday. Last month, you may remember that this programme, Politics Live, reported on residents in privately owned buildings which have fire and safety issues due to a specific type of cladding, which is going to be replaced, but it won't be covered under the government's current scheme. And there are also residents in those buildings fronting the cost for fire wardens in the building. Let's just remind you.
Teams of fire wardens patrolling the blocks 24/7.
The first thing you do is shout, fire, fire, fire.
So you run around?
Yes. You run around, knock as many doors as possible, then tell them the fire point.
The cost of the patrol is being paid for by the flat owners, as well as the replacement to the cladding, which is expected to cost each leaseholder tens of thousands of pounds.
That is money we simply don't have. We'd be bankrupt, we'd be homeless. If this was a car and it was faulty, a company would recall it. And there is no way on earth they'd be expecting you, the customer, to foot the bill of that as well.
Well, Matt Hallsworth, who you saw there just at the end, one of the homeowners featured, is here with us now. Tell us what's been happening since.
So since that, there's been the lobby down at Parliament, which was a really big sort of thing for us. And since then, personally, we've had our first bill for the alarm extension for our flat.
Right, how much is that?
Just under £2,400. So
and,
we're giving
and that's just for you?
That's for our flat, yes.
Right. I mean, how is that leaving you in terms of money?
Well, we don't know. I mean, at the moment, we don't know what the protocol is for paying it. When do they want this money, and what kind of instalments are they wanting it? At the moment, we have no real idea, which is, I think, the big issue at the moment. There seems to be no kind of transparency or communication between the building managers, and I think I speak for quite a lot of people on this, and then the leaseholder as well.
Right. I mean, there must be a lot of worry amongst people, as you say, because you are waiting not just about the safety issue, but about who's going to foot the bill going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the sort of mental health implications, I think all homeowners, myself in particular, I've had to receive counselling, and my partner's had to receive medical help for the stress and anxiety that it's causing. And that's partly down to, the feeling of unsafety in the house every single night when you go to bed. And then also, on top of that, the mounting bills that we have no idea when they're going to demand them.
Right, and you're meeting Robert Jenrick, who is the Secretary of State for Housing, or some of your fellow campaignners.
Yeah, that's right.
What are you hoping to hear from him?
Well, ideally, what we want to hear from Robert is that the government could set up a fire safety fund that will remove leaseholders from the equation completely, and that then after that they can take those building managers and those building owners, to task and get that money back. Because at the moment we're having to foot a huge bill, and we're not in a great position to be able to sort of fight back, especially as individual kind of flat owners against these big businesses.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think, obviously I can't speak for the Ministry of Housing and Local Government or the Secretary of State, but I know that he's taking this situation incredibly seriously, and that he looks forward to meeting you and other representatives, and that he's looking at all and any solutions to this situation, especially to deal with rogue landlords and those people who are responsible for this situation. It's absolutely shocking, appalling actually, to hear the litany of failure from that short report regarding the situation with the architects and the developers of the Grenfell Tower and others. And I think the government is and will take incredibly seriously any recommendations that come out of that, and indeed dealing with the situation that you and other people like yourselves find yourselves in. As I said, I can't speak for the Ministry of Housing and Local Government, but I know that Robert is very much on top of this and wants to find a solution to it as soon as possible.
Well, I heard from some of the leaseholders who have been affected directly by this last week when they came down to Parliament, and it was particularly moving to hear how it's had such an impact on their mental health, knowing that actually there's every chance that something could happen and there'll be no way of dealing with it. The financial ruin that they're facing, the fact that their flats are worthless at the moment because these issues haven't been dealt with. There's been a failure of regulation. People have bought these properties in good faith. At the moment, the government's plans seem to be to exhort the freeholders and the developers to do the right thing and put things back in place. But it's such a complicated system that actually there are lots of people who simply aren't covered. And we reckon there's about 500,000 people in the country at the moment who are in this untenable situation. So I think what is really important is next week there is an announcement in the budget that there's going to be a special fund to deal with everyone who's affected by this issue.
As a Tory MP, do you think that the government should be providing public money for this? Because it's affecting a lot of people, but it might be very expensive to put right. Should there be public money?
I think it's something that the government should be looking at, yes, absolutely. I think we should be looking at any and all ideas, solutions to come to a place where we deal with the issues that that have been thrown up. I remember distinctly the Grenfell Tower fire. I think it happened 2 weeks after the general election in 2017, and it cast a shadow over that entire first year, how we dealt with it. And then when I was working as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the former Prime Minister, I was honoured to meet some of the survivors of Grenfell Tower who came into 10 Downing Street, I think last June, to mark the 2-year anniversary. It's something that has shaped, I think, the entire last Parliament and going into this Parliament. And I think the government, they need to look at any and all ideas where we can actually get to a situation that deals with the problems that you're facing just now, and people like you.
Listening to all of this, are you encouraged?
I mean, it's the thing is, the statements are great, but we need action. And not only do we need action, we need it very, very soon as well, because whilst we're waiting for a solution, we're getting more and more of these bills coming through, and that's not going to stop. I think we need to have it as soon as possible.
Well, come back and tell us how the meeting goes and an update. And as Laura suggests, we'll keep an eye, obviously, on in fact, I think it was you, just on what's in the budget in terms of any announcement.